I don't know if yellow streetlights give anybody else anxiety, but they certainly can give me anxiety. In fact, I think this kind of works the same for everybody. I've kind of figured out there's this curve, there's this bell shape when it comes to the anxiety that one feels at a yellow light. And it definitely works in kind of a peak. And also, the amplitude of this curve, I think, is very much determined by how much traffic is on the road. Because if there's a lot of people on the road, I stress very much about this. But if there's not really anybody on the road, I might still worry a little bit, but not as much. Anyway, so what I basically mean about that is, let's imagine you are at a traffic light, perhaps a turn or a straight or something, and the light is green. I think let's focus on the turn lanes, because there's a finite amount of time with a turn lane, and either making it or not making it can be kind of a big deal to however your overall commute's going to be. Now, you're going along, and maybe you don't know when the light has turned green, so you don't know exactly how long it's already been sitting green, and you're going, and there's people in front of you, there's people behind you, and you have to figure out, okay, when this turns yellow, am I going to stop, or am I going to continue through the light? In some cases, maybe is it going to be so close that maybe I have to speed up a little bit so that I feel comfortable about how I went through that light. And it's complicated. So you're far away. You're heading towards the light, and you know that if the light turned yellow right now, it's not a big deal. It's not a worry, because I'm going to stop, because there's about 5 people in front of me who are going to end up stopping, and everything's fine and wonderful and dandy. And then you keep on going, and the anxiety ramps up a little bit. And like, okay, well, if it turned yellow now, there might be 1 or 2 people in front of me. I might have to be the one that decides it. And at the same time, you're kind of speeding up, and you're going through, and you're getting even closer, and it gets even worse and even bigger until, let's imagine you're in the middle of this huge traffic. It's not like you'd be turning left on to I-4 or whatever, or off of I-4, but you I don't know, some big, huge traffic thing, and there's people, and you know that if you mess something up, people are gonna honk at you, people are gonna be mad at you, someone might, maybe if you take it too late, someone's gonna jump out from the left and hit you or something, and you're stressing because you hit that peak, that point that you know that, okay, if the light turned yellow right now, I don't know what I'd do. I don't know what I would be doing during this instant. I have no idea. You're almost hoping that it either would turn yellow beforehand to save you from having to make that decision. And then you get to the top, and once in a great while, it actually does turn yellow right then. And you have to make the decision. You have to say, okay, am I going to stop, or am I just going to keep going? And everybody makes their own decisions regarding that. Of course, I try to make the best ones that I can. I kind of hope we all do. And once you hit that point, and then you start like, okay, well, if it went now, I'm pretty comfortable with just going through it. I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with going through. And then at that, you eventually get to the point in which you're practically through the light, and you kind of maybe check to see, is it even turning yellow like at all right now, or did I just stress over that whole thing for nothing? And it makes a big difference as to whether there's actually traffic there watching you or not. I mean, if there's not much traffic, then you get that little yellow. There's the anxiety over time, and that just like, and you're like, because if I'm the only one on the road, if it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'm getting out of work, whatever. I don't care as much. I can if it turns, then I'll probably either still stop or I won't. Whatever I can. But then when there's traffic, when it is rush hour, and there are people that are going to be angry at you, or there's going to be people running into, then oh god, maybe it's one of those like 2-lane left turn lanes. So like, oh god, and then you're going to be silently judged by how the person next to you also reacts, and then when you're like, I'm pretty sure I can go through it. Yeah, everything's fine. We're done. We're through it. We're gone. We did it. Way more stress and anxiety over yellow light, traffic light, than there really needs to be. But that's how it is. Is that how it is with you guys too? I imagine so. Maybe? Well, let's get this episode started, shall we? Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of Rich Does a Thing. Now, I have to say, back in episode 19, I was talking about how all these cereal prizes used to be so much better, and I mentioned a specific thing, the baking powder submarine. Now, I don't know how many of you are actually familiar with a baking powder submarine, but, well, I suppose that doesn't matter quite as much. So, after that, within about a week or so, I was going out and I was doing my grocery shopping, and I happened to be, I think, somewhere in the bread aisle, and I looked at my list, I looked at what I needed, I looked up, and sometimes they have those whole strips hanging off the shelf. Well, it just so happened that there was a baking powder submarine, almost as if it were, it were meant to be. Not that that really exists, but still, it had to happen. You couldn't let this happenstance go to waste. So I now have this baking powder submarine. Technically, it's two of them. And, well, I did mention during episode 19 that if it were something that I found, it would be fun, it would be interesting, but then it would be kind of sad to just let that plastic be made and then thrown into a landfill. So it might be something to pass along to other people, but we'll get around to that. So I decided I had to get that. We had to use it in the show. If nothing else, then just for science. And for science, we shall do it. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept of a baking powder submarine, but it's pretty simple. It is that you take a baking powder, put it inside this thing, and that's going to help it, in theory, rise up and down in the water. Now, what in the world is baking powder? Something that most people do tend to have in their houses, although if you don't do any baking or stuff like that, you might not. Baking powder is a leavener. It's something that does tend to be used when you are baking. Now, since we are doing this for science, then what in the world is a leavener? Well, a leavener, kind of by definition, is a substance used in dough or batter to make it rise, such as the things that we're about to talk about. So that's what actually makes the dough kind of soft and spongy and airy and light, and breads and stuff like that really nice to bite into. Now, there's lots of different ways that you can make things leavened. There's actually three basic categories of leavener. We've got your biological leavener, you have your mechanical leavener, and you have your chemical leavener. Now, the traditional biological leavener does tend to be Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is very difficult to say. Now, that is yeast. That's pretty much the leavener. It's a species of yeast found in baker's yeast, unpasteurized beer, ginger beer, sourdough starter, and the stuff like that. Anytime you're dealing with a biological leavener, it tends to be that. Now, they do have some other different types, but it's not very common. So traditionally, yeast for that. There are mechanical ways of leavening things through either putting air into it by beating it. If you are beating egg whites, sifting flour, beating batter, stuff like that, that is a mechanical leavener because you are putting air into it yourself. Now, there's also steam is another mechanical leavener, because if you take water and you heat it up, that expands, that gives you those air pockets, that leavener. So if you bake things at high temperatures so that, like I said, so the water turns to steam, such as with cream puffs, that's a really good example of using steam as a mechanical leavener. And the third category being a chemical leavener. And there's a couple of really common chemical leaveners that are used in baking, and you probably have sitting in your house right now. Those chemical leaveners being baking soda and baking powder. Now, what in the world are baking soda and baking powder, and how do they work? Well, baking soda is a base. It's a basic powder that you mix with acidic foods such as buttermilk. You can actually mix it together with a number of things, such as even other acids, lemon juice, and stuff like that. That's how you would make things like the baking soda volcanoes. So in that case, it's actually an acid mixing with that base that gives it that reaction and gives it that leavening. Now for baking powder, you pretty much just add water. That is generally speaking how that works. And that is why for this submarine, baking powder should work. Baking soda will not. If we use baking soda, we will end up with wet baking soda. If we use baking powder, we should get the reaction that we are looking for. Now, there's actually even two different kinds of baking powder, which I didn't know until I started looking into this. There is a single acting and double acting. The type we're using today is going to be Clabber Girl double acting baking powder. Now, the difference between single acting and double acting is that with a single acting baking powder, you only get one reaction. You have essentially what baking powder is. This stuff was invented in 1843, where you take a powdered base, a powdered chemical base, such as really baking powder. Like, there's a very good chance that baking soda, such as baking soda, that's actually more than likely going to be the base that's used in this powder, combined with a powdered acid, so that when the two combine, once again, you have that same reaction like we were talking about with the baking soda. But how come if they're all sitting next to each other in the can, they don't react? Well, apparently they get mixed with cornstarch or something that helps to kind of keep them separate, but when you get everything wet, that actually lets everything combine and makes it happen. So, that actually happens in both types of baking powder. Now, the double-acting baking soda actually has not one, but two different kinds of acids. One of those types of acids actually doesn't activate until it is heated, which means that you can actually have all that mixed together it'll have the base and the acid and everything pressed right up next to each other. But once you throw it in the oven and it starts to heat up, then that acid activates, reacts with that baking soda, and you get that reaction again, which can help to leaven your product even more. Now, chances are with what we're doing, we're not going to be heating it up very much, so we're really only going to use the first part of that action. But in any case, that's the science behind this baking powder. Now, other cool information about the baking powder submarine. So baking powder as a whole, like I said, was invented in 1843. However, the baking powder submarine wasn't invented until 1953. Now, in 1954, only about a year later, the concept of the baking powder submarine was actually sold to Kellogg breakfast cereal. Imagine that. So, what happened in 1954 when Kellogg got a hold of this is they made 1 million of those 4.5-inch plastic ship model prizes. They had those produced by May of 1954. So that was the old cereal box tops racket from yesteryear, where yes, you would take the top of one of your boxes and quarter, which back then was probably actually worth something, and you would send that off to Kellogg's, and they would send you your very own baking powder submarine. I believe I've actually had the pleasure of playing with my dad's old childhood one when I went to my grandparents' house. I think they still had it, and that's actually kind of cool. I seem to remember my dad saying that he remembered sending off for it, because it was kind of a big deal. So yes, they had that. Now, later on, they had a smaller 2.5-inch version, which was later produced to be used as a cereal box prize, not requiring separate redemption by mail. So that was one of those things where they would just toss the small one in there, but if you wanted the big one, the real one, you'd have to mail in. Now, I don't know if these people have taken the same type of mold, or if it's a new version of it that they have for themselves, but I mean, it almost kind of looks like those are about the size, because we do have the big purple one, and then there's this tiny little green one off to the side, and I'm really curious to see how well these work. So, what do you say? Let's go give it a shot. Okay, so let's get these set up. So we've got our subs. We have our baking powder. Now, from what I gather, the way that you get the baking powder in, even though there's a nice little spot on the bottom, but apparently that's not where that goes. You actually have to wiggle and lift out the top, and there's a spot right there that they tell you to kind of try to spoon it in. We're probably going to make a little bit of a mess, which is why we have the plate going on there.
So in this case, maybe that's going to be too much, but we'll see. So you kind of spoon out some of the baking powder and try to get as much of that in there as possible. That looks pretty good, aside from the powdery mess. Pop that back into place, and there, I believe we have ourselves a fully loaded baking powder submarine. We'll do that with a tiny one too, because I'm curious to see if there's going to be any difference really between the two. They might both work just about the same way, but who knows? Maybe one of them's going to work really well, and maybe the other one's just going to be a complete piece of junk. We don't know. That looks... yeah, that's going to be full too. Okay. So take that. I guess we'll put the periscope to face the front, and that way they can see where they're going. And you end up with your 2 loaded up subs. All right, now we can actually give this a shot. Now, I can tell you that from reading the instructions, I have already messed this up. Because this tells me that you're only supposed to fill the subs up halfway with baking powder, where we've filled them completely. So there's going to be a chance that I'm going to get my arm wet, because this may sink to the bottom and not come back up. But we'll give it a shot, and we're going to keep doing this until hopefully it works out properly. So we're going to take that big purple kind of pink sub. They say to put it in the water and to give it a shake. Wow. Who knows? We might get double action out of this after all. I put some pretty hot water in there.
Spewing out something.
It is.
Little crewmen on there are starting to take the instructions. Dive! Dive! No, that's rising! No!
Maybe there's some, maybe there's a bubble caught. Oh.
There's a few bubbles coming out.
But like on the underside here, is there?
Oh.
Oh. Maybe that got us in the direction. Okay, all right. Give it like an upside down shake. Make sure we get all the bubbles out of the bottom. Okay, that's...
So it's just supposed to sink?
Well, it sinks at first. And then the baking powder reacts to the water. And we do get those bubbles because with the baking powder, what it's doing is it's making that acid and the base combine. So it's producing carbon dioxide. Now that carbon dioxide builds up and is supposed to lift the sub up. I don't know if those bubbles are supposed to be escaping or not. Well, the only way to fix this problem, I think, is to make it worse. So let's take the green one. Let's do the same thing with the green one. See if that either works any better or any worse. Because, I mean, if we're going to have to redo
the green one into the rescue.
Yes. Oh, that's... there you go. Okay, all right.
Ooh.
That was a satisfying sink. Now, they did warn...
I act better.
Well, maybe. They did warn that if they were too full, it might not rise. Oh, I see that purple one's waggling.
It's trying.
It is.
Battleship. Sunk.
Yeah.
Did you ever play Battleship?
We have Battleship.
We have Battleship?
We have Battleship. We should be playing this as we're doing this.
Rich does the same Battleship.
Yes.
We should.
Yeah.
Oh!
Oh.
The tail started to lift. Oh.
Oh, well, it's shifting anyway. It's moving. That might be a good sign. Oh, they're gonna crash.
No, they're just coming over. Say hi.
That green one has not budged. Not even really seen any bubbles out of the green one.
And you sent those.
Oh! Well, that's a bummer there, because from what I understood, the concept was that it would come to the top, and then once it came to the top, it would flip over and sink again. So the fact that it just flipped over and rested on the bottom...
That purple one's still moving. It's still trying to do something.
Oh, we have lift! We have lift!
Nice!
Yes!
So it's supposed to flip over.
Yeah, it gives that little tip that dumps out the air that was hanging around, and then it's supposed to sink again. All right, let's see if we can fish out the sub. So, oh, God, that's hot.
Want me to do it?
No.
I don't mind hot water. Oh!
We accidentally helped out the other sub. If you happen to have a pickle grabber, those are excellent for these subs, apparently.
I didn't know you had a pickle grabber.
Yeah.
And I like the pickles we have, and I'm wondering why you haven't given me the pickle grabber.
It's been right there.
Grabbing.
There, we're taking out like half the baking powder.
Oh!
Yeah.
Watch the purple.
I know.
It's doing. Oh!
Hey!
Hey! That's so cool. I didn't think this would be so entertaining, but it is. Oh, faster?
Maybe. Maybe it's
It tipped just a slight bit.
yeah. I think it needs a little help on the tip.
Man, we're losing fuel.
Yeah, we sure are. This is why it says on the package, do not use these in an aquarium.
Oh, green.
Oh yeah. It's coming up to help. Oh, we're gonna make it or we're gonna flip. Bonk.
Ah. Wow.
Yeah, that's all you get.
There we go. There we go. Sometimes you just need a little assist. Oh no.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to go well. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh. You need to move
Ooh.
hard to port. Nope.
What?
Oh.
Oh. Yeah. They knew. They used their sonar. They're like, no, we can't go down there. We're going to crash. Oh, green one.
Oh God, Mayday. You coming in too hot?
Oh, he's turning. He's turning. He might make
He's
it.
not gonna make it. Oh, clear. Yeah.
Yeah. This is exciting stuff. Why am I so entertained?
I feel like maybe they need like a little extra help once they get to the top.
They are touching.
They holding hands?
They're kind of like the Jack and the
Rose?
Rose, yeah.
I've never actually seen it.
Oh, yeah. You've not seen Titanic?
I made it a point to not see Titanic
Why?
because it was really popular bubblegum.
Well, listen, it's out of popularity. You can see it now. It's pretty good. I didn't want to see it because it was popular too, but it's actually pretty good. It's not bad. Not bad movie.
Oh no, it's a kraken! Bop!
Wow. Oh, green one. Yay. That's so cool.
Told you. These are fun.
So is this what you would do as a kid?
I mean, this is what people could do as a kid. This is one of the many activities.
Did you do this?
Yes. I think once for,
I never did this.
Yeah.
I never knew this existed.
That's why we're doing it.
So poor. So.
Well, no. Well, this is not an
No, it's
expensive
not an
thing.
expensive toy, no. I wouldn't have had the patience for it then, because as ADD as I am now, imagine what I was when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think tradition. Well, I don't know. I'd have to ask Dad if it was a thing where the kids would actually put the baking powder in or not, or if they would have Mom or Dad have it.
I'd say that just depends on the age. Probably no, unless you were outside where you could get messy. Hello. What do we do? I don't know why I just gave them whale voices.
They could be whales. Maybe it's a
if
whale
they
on
were
how.
whales, I would have been much more interested as a child.
Diving whale. Yeah, that's a thing. You can make them.
They should make these as whales.
Dolphins.
Whales.
Maybe these are whales on Halloween. Maybe these are their costumes. Going from pod to pod, searching for like handfuls of krill.
Nice.
I know. They love krill too.
It's nice to see it happening.
Yes.
Ooh. Has the green one come back up?
Yes, and it went back down.
Oh. Can't keep me down. Said the purple one.
See some shift. Yeah.
Whoa. Now you gotta get a kazoo. Woo!
A slide whistle, yeah.
Woo! Slide whistle. A kazoo. Ah!
Freedom!
So there you have it, the baking powder sub. Finally, there it is in all of its glory. I mean, through the screen. I mean, be nice if you could get closer to it. Oh, wait, that's right, you can get closer to it. Because just like I said back in episode 19, it would be a whole lot nicer if we didn't just take this plastic sub and chuck it in the landfill. So here's where you come in if you would like. So what I have done is I've taken that big purple sub and I have it in a box. I have it in a box, and I also have it in a box with a vial of baking powder in case some of you don't happen to have some baking powder in there. This is way more than you're going to need, but it's one of those, if you've got it at home, use the stuff you've got at home, and if you don't, feel free to use some of this. And you too can use this baking powder submarine, because yes, I've got it all nice in this wonderful little box, and I'm willing to send it out there to you in this kind of, you know, siblinghood of the traveling baking powder submarine. So if you are interested in trying this out and having this sent to your home where you can try it and enjoy it, the only catch is that you have to be willing to send it on to the next person. Whether it's the next person or, you know, if this thing runs out, then, you know, I'll have you send it back to me. So, yeah, it's only costs a few bucks to ship it off to the next person. But this way, we're not putting plastic back in the landfill, and you get to experience the joys of the baking powder submarine for yourself. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and write me at rich@richdoesathing.com. Feel free in the subject line, you can put BP sub or baking powder submarine or something like that in the subject line. That way I know what we're doing. And I will send that off to you, and you can send it off to somebody else, and they will send it off to even another person after that. And we're just going to have a great time with this baking powder submarine. So who wants to do something weird and fun and strange? Go ahead and mail me. It's been a while since I've treated you all to a little bit of RICHcraft, and as it just so happens, I do still have some video from that Hogwarts colloquium. So I have another trick that I will show you. As much as it has a title, the title of the trick kind of spoils the trick. So here's some RICHcraft.
Here I actually have a, well here, even if we set it over there, you can even see it. That is actually a prediction envelope that helps to predict hopefully something that will be happening in the future. So we've got a deck of cards. It's not all just the same card, it's a whole heap of different ones. Here, when I flip through here, if you could do me a favor and just tell me stop. Right there, or do you want me to keep going?
That's good.
All right, go ahead and I'll have you take a look at the card that you had me stop at. And so we had that prediction up there from before you even chose a card. Now the real question to this whole thing is, do you know exactly what is in this prediction envelope? Do you know absolutely, for a fact, what is inside this prediction envelope? So the answer being exactly. Perfect prediction. Perfect prediction, 100% right on. Nailed it. Now, second prediction. Name any celebrity for me. Reese Witherspoon. Would it blow your mind if I had a picture of Reese Witherspoon right here? What? It would probably impress everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a picture of Reese Witherspoon at age 1.
Oh.
I know you're probably wondering, like, what if she'd said like Kobe Bryant? No worries, we got that covered too. That's perfect. Now, if I open this up and it had your card on there, would you be impressed? Sure. She said with enthusiasm. She is at the edge of her seat. It's the back edge, but it's the edge. We open this and your card with about 51 others. Amazing, isn't it? Yes. No, but seriously, we do have your card right there. Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that bit of RICHcraft as I enjoyed performing it for you. And well, that tends to finish us up for this episode of Rich Does a Thing, with a little bit of extra announcement at the end. Of course, at the end, we always like to go over social media, so of course, please check me out at Rich Does a Thing on Facebook, Rich Does a Thing on Twitter, on Instagram. We've got Rich Does a Thing on Snapchat, on Pinterest, on Tumblr, yes, even on TikTok. Needed to do a few more videos there, but it's there, it exists. So yeah, feel free to connect on all those things. And then the newest one, which might be one of the more important ones of them all, is Patreon. That's right, we have actually hooked ourselves up to Patreon as a way to try to make this whole thing work. Now, I won't always get into the nitty-gritty of it each and every episode, perhaps just periodically, but Patreon is a way that you can actually help donate to Rich Does a Thing. You can kind of subscribe for a monthly fee, and that helps keep the show going, because even when we're not really doing anything, not spending money doing crazy things, there's still, hundreds of dollars that ends up having to get spent every year. And so the best way to keep this going, especially where we are right now, is by some support from you. Now, it's certainly not required. I'm still happy to do this for you guys as much as I can, but donating to it not only helps us get some unique equipment, maybe some upgrades to some things, help the show get a little better. It lets us go do more things, explore more things, and I can promise you that 100% of the money is going to be going right back into the show. Now, at the same time, you're not doing this for nothing. I actually want you to be able to get some benefits from this. So if you go to patreon.com and you check out Rich Does a Thing, there's actually 4 different tiers that you can possibly donate to. The first, most basic one is $2 a month. And that tier is called Hey Thanks. And it's real simple. It is just thank you very much for donating even that little bit a month. I mean, $2 a month ends up being $24 a year. So really not a whole heck of a lot, but it does mean quite a bit as far as being able to help this thing keep going. So at that tier, you get my thanks, and you also get looped in on a monthly letter that I'll be emailing directly to your inbox with just some kind of my thoughts and maybe some strange writings and things like that. Is just my way of saying thank you for being a patron to the show. The next tier up is just a modest step of $3 a month, and that tier is called Patron to a Thing. Now, when you become a patron to a thing, not only do you get, of course, my thanks, and you get access to that monthly letter that gets sent out, you also get early access to photos and videos. As I'm starting to do things, as I'm putting things together, like, for instance, maybe if I was doing this baking powder sub, I would be spitting out some little pictures and videos of that whole thing getting set up. If I'm going out to explore a place, maybe I'd take some kind of behind-the-scenes photos of what's going on there and get those sent out to you, and you'd get to see them before anybody else, before it even hit the episode. On top of that, you also get access to the Patreon chat community for Rich Does a Thing. So you get to connect with not only other Rich Does a Thing people, but also me, myself. And so we get to engage in that dialogue. So that's fun. That's for only $3 a month. Now, for $9 a month, you get to become a connoisseur of the strange. This tier is really cool because you actually get voting power for future content. There are times in which I'm putting a show together, and I'm maybe not 1,000% sure which direction I want to go with a particular episode. And, well, everybody that's in that tier, I'm going to ask you for some input periodically, and maybe some things that you'd like to see, and those are the things that we'll end up doing. So you'll get voting power. You'll actually get the opportunity to join in as a live audience for some segments. There'll be some segments that when I record them, I'll actually start up something like Zoom or the like, and I'll let you guys come on in and be a live audience so that, you can hear and possibly even see some of your reactions to something, whether it's maybe we're reading out Florida Man stories or maybe we're doing some RICHcraft. It'll probably vary, but periodically I'll try to make sure that that happens as well. You also get that I will follow one of your social media accounts. So if you've got like a Twitter or an Instagram or something like that you would love for me to follow, not only for whatever bragging rights you might have of Rich Does a Thing following you, but at the same time it helps us be a little bit more connected. I get to see what you're up to, and we just get to be a little bit better connected that way. Also, you get the first look at the photos and videos. You get looped into that. Plus, you'll still get that monthly letter that gets sent out as well with all my different thoughts and everything. And you get to be part of that Patreon chat community as well. So there's actually a lot of stuff that you get to be part of for being a connoisseur of the strange. Last but certainly not least, the final tier for Rich Does a Thing on Patreon is becoming VIP level awesome for science. Now, that is a $25 a month subscription, which honestly makes a huge difference as far as, being able to pay our bills, being able to do new things, to be able to, spend money towards exploring new parts of Florida, exploring new things, and does some really, really awesome stuff. So, I mean, not only do you get the satisfaction of being a VIP contributor for science and for Rich Does a Thing, but I'll give you a personalized shout out right here in the show. That way everybody can see and hear just how awesome you are. After 6 months of being a VIP level awesome, I will actually send you a personalized thank you video to you for doing that. In addition to that, you still get all the other wonderful benefits from all the other tiers. You do get voting power in future Rich Does a Thing shows. You still get that shout out. You still get that personalized video. You get the fact that you can be part of the live audience periodically for when I'm doing shows. I'll follow one of your social media accounts. You get the first look at some photos and videos that come up for Rich Does a Thing. You get the monthly letter that I send out. You get to be a part of the Patreon chat community, and you just get my undying gratitude for helping Rich Does a Thing do its thing. So those are the 4 tiers that we have available. So please consider going on to patreon.com, and even if it's just a little bit, feel free to just donate to that. It's it can be as little or as big as you want, and you can really help the show go along. So thank you. Check us out at all the other social media outlets, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, the biggie. Oh, God. I guess I'll see you next time.